Arthur Coleman had long ago learned that silence could be louder than any storm. In his mansion, 40,000 square feet of marble, glass, and cold echo silence didn't feel like comfort. It felt like judgment. At 3 in the morning, when the great clock in the foyer began its slow, heavy chime, that judgment echoed through the halls like a reminder that he had no one left to talk to, nowhere left to go, and nothing capable of quieting his restless mind. He stood at the top of the grand staircase, one hand gripping the mahogany railing, the other clutching a heavy book on Roman history he had not managed to read a single page of. His silk robe, tailored to perfection, did nothing to stop the cold that had settled into his bones. Insomnia had become his most loyal companion over the years, one that refused to leave no matter what wealth or doctors or meditation instructors he threw at it. His empire, built on predicting storms in every ocean on the planet, had no solution for the one that raged quietly inside him. He rubbed his forehead and breathed out slowly. The house was utterly still, but as he turned to head back toward his library, he heard something he had not expected. Something small, domestic, impossibly human, in the dead quiet of his sterile mansion. The delicate clink of glass on granite. Arthur froze. His security system was impenetrable. No intruder would make a sound like that. It was an employee. But at this hour, why would anyone be working at 3 in the morning? He moved silently down the staircase, his leather slippers making no sound on the plush runner. The faint noise drew him through the east hallway, past shadowed portraits of men who had built legacies and lost families in equal measure. The sound grew clearer, water running, the rhythmic circular scrape of a sponge against a plate. He pushed open the heavy oak door to the main kitchen. The room was mostly dark except for a single yellow stove light that cast a small circle of warmth just over the massive stainless steel counters. The industrial sink towered like a steel vat meant for a factory, not a home. Standing before it, dwarfed by the equipment, was a girl. She looked barely more than a child. Her back was to him, shoulders hunched over the sink as if she were trying to disappear into it. She scrubbed a wine glass as though it were the last thing holding her entire world together. Her hands moved fast, frantic, too frantic. Arthur cleared his throat. The girl gasped and spun around so quickly she almost lost her grip on the glass. It slipped, wobbling between her wet fingers, but she lunged and caught it, her knuckles whitening with effort. Her eyes were wide, terrified, not startled, terrified. "Mr. Coleman," she whispered, breath trembling. Arthur stared at her, trying to place her face. He had employees, but he rarely saw them. George, his head of staff, handled personnel. This girl, pale and exhausted and shaking, was not someone he recognized. "Who are you?" he asked. His voice wasn't cruel, but it carried the weight of someone used to immediate answers. I'm Claire, sir," she said, drying her hands on a dish towel in a frantic, clumsy motion. "Claire Miller, Helen's daughter." Helen, his housekeeper of 5 years. Quiet, efficient, reliable. Arthur stepped into the kitchen and switched on the main lights. Claire flinched as the sterile brightness revealed her fully. She was young, 16, maybe 17, with blonde hair pulled back in a messy ponytail. Strands were stuck to her forehead with sweat. Her clothes were worn but clean. Her eyes, shadowed with deep circles, were bruised with exhaustion. Her hands were red and raw from hot water and dish soap. "What are you doing here at this hour?" Arthur asked more softly. "Where is your mother?" "She's sick, sir," Claire said. Too quickly, too rehearsed. "She felt terrible about the dishes from your party. I told her I'd take care of them so she could rest." Arthur glanced at the sink, overflowing with dishes from his 30-person dinner. This was work for multiple staff members, not a teenage girl in the middle of the night. "A bad cold," he repeated. "Yes, sir," her voice cracked. "Just a cold." "If she has a cold," Arthur said carefully, "why would her daughter be here at 3 in the morning doing her job?" Claire's expression shifted, fear replaced with a sudden, sharp flash of anger. "She didn't send me," she said fiercely. "She doesn't know I'm here. I have a key. I help her sometimes. I just wanted to get this done before she woke up so she wouldn't worry." A lie. A brave lie. But still a lie. "You should be at home. In bed," Arthur said. "You have school in the morning." Claire flinched. It was small, almost invisible, but Arthur noticed it instantly. He noticed everything. Flinches in boardrooms had made him billions. "Yes, sir," she whispered. "I'll finish quickly. I promise I won't disturb you again. I'm very quiet." She turned back to the sink, a dismissal. Arthur didn't leave. He watched her work in silence, watched her scrub the same plate several times as if she could wash away whatever was haunting her. Then he noticed the backpack near the door. It was old, faded, heavy-looking. Hanging from the zipper was a bright blue and gold honor cord, the kind worn by valedictorians at graduation. And tucked into a side pocket was a small, framed photograph, a young woman holding a baby next to a man in a crisp army uniform. Every single detail sharpened something painful in Arthur's chest. "Claire," he said quietly, "leave the dishes." She froze. "Sir?" "Leave them," Arthur repeated. "Go home. Get some sleep." "But if they're not done, my mom, she'll get in trouble." "I will handle your mother," Arthur said firmly. "Go home." Claire deflated. Not in relief, this looked like defeat. "Yes, sir," she whispered. She grabbed her backpack, slung it over her shoulder, and slipped out the side door into the cold pre-dawn darkness. Arthur remained, staring at the half-cleaned sink, the honor cord in his mind like a beacon. A valedictorian washing dishes at 3 a.m., lying to protect her mother, exhausted to the point of collapse. It didn't add up. He paced the mansion until 7. When the clock finally chimed the hour, he picked up his phone. "George," he said when his head of staff answered, "I need information." By late afternoon, George stood before him with a thin manila folder and a solemn expression Arthur had not seen in years. "You were right, sir," George said softly. "About everything." He opened the folder. "Claire Miller," he said, sliding a printout across the desk. 17. Senior at Northwood High. She is, or was, the district's valedictorian. Of 4 gigapascals. She was awarded a full academic scholarship to Georgetown University. Arthur felt something inside him twist. "She stopped attending school 25 days ago," George continued. "She missed the deadline to accept the scholarship. The principal has been trying to reach her family, but their phone is disconnected. She will not graduate." Arthur leaned back, eyes closed for a moment. "A girl like that doesn't just walk away from her future," he muttered. "She's being forced to." "Helen Miller, her mother," George said quietly. "She does not have a cold. She was diagnosed with a severe, aggressive form of lupus 2 months ago. Her insurance will not cover the new treatment. It costs $900 a month. She lost her second job because of her illness. Your job is the only income they have left." Arthur swallowed hard. "And the photo?" he asked. George handed him a military record. "Captain Robert Miller," he said. "Claire's grandfather. 101st Airborne Division. Baker Company." Arthur froze. Baker Company. He crossed the room, picked up a dusty frame from his shelf, a photo of young soldiers in fatigues, smiling in a sweltering jungle. "My brother," Arthur whispered. "Thomas served in Baker Company." He stared at the military file, at the girl's raw red hands, at her honor cord. "This is not an employee," Arthur said slowly. "This is family." Within the hour, he was at a run-down apartment building he hadn't seen the likes of in decades. 3rd floor. Unit 3B. The door creaked open just an inch, held by a chain. "Mr. Coleman?" Helen whispered when she recognized him even through her pain. She looked decades older than 5 years ago. Her hands were swollen, her face gray, her movements slow and labored. Shame radiated off her as she stepped aside to let him in. "I saw Claire last night," Arthur said gently. Helen broke. She collapsed onto the sofa, tears streaming. "I told her not to," she sobbed. "I told her I could still work, that I just needed a little rest." "Why didn't you tell me you were sick?" "And say what?" Helen whispered. "That I'm failing? That my daughter is giving up everything to keep me alive?" Arthur's jaw tightened. "The scholarship," he said quietly. Helen let out a broken sound. "I found the letter," she cried. "The presidential scholar letter from the White House. In the trash. She threw it away. She said, 'Does it pay for medicine, Mom?'" The words shredded Arthur. "Where is she now?" he asked. "She got a job," Helen whispered. "Night shift. At the Evening Star Diner. She's killing herself trying to keep up. She comes home at dawn, sleeps a few hours, then stays awake in case I collapse." Arthur stood so fast Helen flinched. "Lock your door," he said. "I'll bring her home." The Evening Star Diner was a world away from Arthur's mansion. Bright, loud, smelling of burnt coffee and fried onions. He took a booth and ordered a coffee he did not intend to drink. He watched the girl through the crowd. Claire moved like a ghost. She carried trays too heavy for her frame. Her uniform hung on her, Her hands trembled every time she picked up a glass. Her face was blank, hollow. Then the manager barked at her. A heavy bus tub of dishes slipped. She winced. She whispered an apology. She kept going. Arthur waited until she was clearing the table beside him. "Claire," he said softly. She turned. When she saw him, color drained from her face. The tray crashed to the floor. Plates shattered. Conversations died around them. "Miller!" the manager screamed. "Are you stupid? That's coming out of your pay!" Claire sank to her knees, scrambling to pick up shards of glass with bare hands. Arthur stood. "That's enough," he said, voice cold enough to freeze the room. He stepped between Claire and the manager, towering over the angry little man. He dropped $300 bills onto the counter without looking at them. "For the dishes and for my coffee." Then he knelt, bringing himself eye level with Claire. "Get up," he said gently. "We're leaving." "I can't," she whispered, shaking. "My shift." "Your shift is over." She stared at his hand, then placed her trembling hand into his. And Arthur Coleman, the man who commanded fleets of ships and made CEOs tremble, lifted her as if she weighed nothing at all. Mitch started to protest. Arthur turned his head, eyes sharp as steel. "She's finished," no one argued. He walked her out of the diner, his coat around her thin shoulders, her small hand gripping his like she was holding on to the last solid thing in her collapsing world. Outside, the cold air hit her and she swayed. Arthur steadied her. "Claire," he said softly, "everything is going to change now." She looked up at him, eyes full of pain and disbelief. "Why?" she whispered. "Why would you help us?" Arthur took a slow breath. "Because," he said, voice breaking for the first time in years, "your grandfather served beside my brother, and because no member of that family will suffer while I still draw breath." Claire's tears spilled silently. And for the first time in decades, Arthur Coleman felt his insomnia loosen its grip, not because the silence was gone, but because he finally had someone worth breaking it for.